I'm here again to read you some Harry Potter. We are still on chapter 17. There are 18 chapters in this book. We are almost done. I'm getting so excited. We left off with Harry finding Ginny in the Chamber of Secrets and also finding Tom Riddle, who, if you remember, he was the man who was writing, or person, or whatever. We're not quite sure what he is, but he was writing in the diary back to Harry. So now he is there in person, and we have to decide what is happening, okay? Alrighty, so we just learned that Tom Riddle set Hagrid up in the beginning of the story, actually 50 years ago when the Chamber of Secrets opened the first time, in order to get him expelled and have people think that he was the one that opened the chamber, okay? So, only the Transfiguration teacher Dumbledore seemed to think Hagrid was innocent. He persuaded Dippet to keep Hagrid and train him as gamekeeper. Yes, I think Dumbledore might have guessed. Dumbledore never seemed to like me as much as the other teachers did. I bet Dumbledore saw right through you, said Harry, his teeth gritted. Well, he certainly kept an annoyingly close watch on me after Hagrid was expelled, said Riddle carelessly. I knew I wouldn't be safe to open the chamber again while I was at school, but I wasn't going to waste those long years I'd spent searching for it. I decided to leave behind a diary, preserving my 16-year-old self in its pages, so that one day, with luck, I would be able to lead another in my footsteps and finish Salazar Slytherin's noble work. Well, you haven't finished it, said Harry triumphantly. No one's died this time, not even the cat. In a few hours, the Mandrake drought will be ready, and everyone who was petrified will be all right again. Haven't I already told you, said Riddle quietly, that killing mudbloods doesn't matter to me anymore. For many months now, my new target has been you. Harry stared at him. Imagine how angry I was. When the next time my diary was opened, it was Ginny who was writing to me, not you. She saw you with the diary, you see, and panicked. What if you found out how to work it, and I repeated all her secrets to you? What if, even worse, I told you he'd been strangling roosters? So the foolish little brat waited until your dormitory was deserted and stole it back. But I knew what I must do. It was clear to me that you were on the trail of the Slytherin's heir. From everything Ginny had told me about you, I knew you would go to any lengths to solve the mystery, particularly if one of your best friends was attacked. And Ginny had told me the whole school was buzzing because you could speak Parseltongue. So I made Ginny write her own farewell on the wall and come down here to wait. She struggled and cried and became very boring, but there isn't much life in her. She put too much into the diary, into me, enough to let me leave its pages at last. I had been waiting for you to appear since we arrived here. I knew you'd come. I have many questions for you, Harry Potter. Like what? Harry spat, fist still clenched. Well, said Riddle, smiling pleasantly, how is it that you, a skinny boy with no extraordinary magical talent, managed to defeat the greatest wizard of all time? How did you escape with nothing but a scar while Lord Voldemort's powers were destroyed? There's an old red gleam in his hungry eyes now. Why do you care how I escaped? Said Harry slowly. Voldemort was after your time. Voldemort, said Riddle softly, is my past, present, and future, Harry Potter. He pulled Harry's wand from his pocket and began to trace in through the air, writing 3 shimmering words. Tom Marvolo Riddle. Then he waved the wand once, and the letters of his name rearranged themselves, and it said, I am Lord Voldemort. You see, he whispered, it was a name I was already using at Hogwarts to my most intimate friends only, of course. You think I was going to use my filthy muggle father's name forever? I, in whose veins run the blood of Salazar Slytherin himself, though through my mother's side. I keep the name of a foul, common muggle who abandoned me even before I was born just because he found out his wife was a witch? No, Harry, I fashioned myself a new name, a name I knew wizards everywhere would one day fear to speak. When I had become the greatest sorcerer in the world. Harry's brain seemed to have jammed. He stared numbly at Riddle, at the orphan boy who had grown up to murder Harry's own parents and so many others. At last he forced himself to speak. You're not, he whispered, his quiet voice full of hatred. Not what? Snapped Riddle. Not the greatest sorcerer in the world, said Harry, breathing fast. Sorry to disappoint you and all that, but the greatest wizard in the world is Albus Dumbledore. Everyone says so. Even when you were strong, you didn't dare try and take over Hogwarts. Dumbledore saw you through you when you were at school, and he still frightens you now, wherever you're hiding these days. The smile had gone from Riddle's face, and he was replaced by a very ugly look. Dumbledore's been driven out of the castle by the mere memory of me, he hissed. He's not as gone as you might think, Harry retorted. He was speaking at random, wanting to scare Riddle, rather than believing it was true. Riddle opened his mouth but froze. Music was coming from somewhere. Riddle whirled around to stare down the empty chamber. The music was growing louder. It was an eerie, spine-tingling, unheartening. It lifted the hair on Harry's scalp and made his heart feel as though it was swelling to twice its normal size. Then, as the music reached such a pitch that Harry felt it vibrating inside his own ribs, flames erupted at the top of the nearest pillar. A crimson bird the size of a swan had appeared, piping its weird music to the vaulted ceiling. It had a glittering golden tail as long as a peacock's and a gleaming golden talon which were gripped as a rat in a ragged bundle. A second later, the bird was flying straight at Harry. It dropped the ragged thing it was carrying at his feet, then landed heavily on its shoulder. As it folded its great wings, Harry looked up and saw it had long, sharp, golden beak and a beady black eyes. The bird stopped singing. It sat still and warm next to Harry's cheek, gazing steadily at Riddle. "That's a phoenix," said Riddle, staring shrewdly back at it. "Fox," Harry breathed as he felt the bird's golden claws squeezing his shoulder gently. "And that," said Riddle, now eyeing the ragged thing that Fox had dropped, "that's the old-school sorting hat." So it was. Patched, frayed, and dirty, the hat lay motionless at Harry's feet. Riddle began to laugh again. He laughed so hard that the dark chamber rang with it, as though 10 Riddles were laughing at once. "This is what Dumbledore sends his defender? A songbird and an old hat. Do you feel brave, Harry Potter? Do you feel safe now?" Harry didn't answer. He might not see what use Fox or the sorting hat were, but he was no longer alone, and he waited for Riddle to stop laughing with his courage mounting. "To business, Harry," said Riddle, still smiling broadly. "Twice in your past, in my future, we have met, and twice I have failed to kill you. How did you survive? Tell me everything. The longer you talk," he added softly, "the longer you stay alive." Harry was thinking fast, weighing his chances. Riddle had the wand. He, Harry, had Fox and the sorting hat, neither of which would be much good in a duel. It looked bad, all right. But the longer Riddle stood there, the more life was dwindling out of Ginny, and in the meantime, Harry noticed suddenly that Riddle's outline was becoming clearer and more solid. If it had to be a fight between him and Riddle, better sooner than later. "No one knows why you lost your powers when you attacked me," said Harry abruptly. "I don't know myself, but I know why you couldn't kill me. Because my mother died to save me. My common, muggle-born mother," he added, shaking his suppressed rage. "She stopped you killing me, and I've seen the real you. I saw you last year. You're a wreck. You're barely alive. That's where all your power got you. You're in hiding. You're ugly. You're foul." Riddle's face contorted. Then he forced it into an awful smile. "So, your mother died to save you. Yes, that's a powerful counter-charm. I can see now. There's nothing special about you after all. I wondered, you see, because there are strange likeness between us, Harry Potter. Even you must have noticed. Both half-bloods, orphans, raised by muggles, probably the only 2 Parselmouths to come to Hogwarts since the great Slytherin Aaron himself. We even look something alike. But after all, it was merely a lucky chance that saved you from me. That's all I wanted to know." Harry stood tense, waiting for Riddle to raise his wand, but Riddle's twisted smile was widening again. "Now, Harry, I'm going to teach you a little lesson. Let's match the powers of Lord Voldemort, heir of Slytherin, Salazar Slytherin, against famous Harry Potter and the best weapons Dumbledore could give him." He cast an amused eye over Fox and the sorting hat, then walked away. Harry's fear spreading into his numb legs, watched Riddle stop between the high pillars and look up at the stone face of Slytherin. High above him in the half-darkness, Riddle opened his mouth wide and hissed, but Harry understood what he was saying. "Speak to me, Slytherin, greatest of Hogwarts 4. Harry wheeled around to look at the statue, Fox swaying on his shoulder. Slytherin's gigantic stone face was moving. Horror-struck, Harry saw its mouth opening wider and wider to make a huge black hole, and something was stirring inside the statue's mouth. Something was slithering up from its depths. Harry backed away until he hit the dark chamber wall, and as he shut his eyes tight, he felt Fox's wings sweep his cheek as he took flight. Harry wanted to shout, "Don't leave me!" But what choice did a phoenix have against the king of serpents? Something huge hit the stone floor of the chamber. Harry felt it shudder. He knew what was happening. He could sense it, could almost see the giant serpent uncoiling itself from Slytherin's mouth. Then he heard Riddle's hissing voice. "Kill him." The basilisk was moving toward Harry. He could hear its heavy body slithering heavily across the dusty floor. Eyes still tightly shut, Harry began to run blindly sideways, his hands outstretched, feeling his way. Voldemort was laughing. Harry tripped. He fell hard onto the stone and tasted blood. The serpent was barely feet from him, and he could hear it coming. There was a loud, explosive spitting sound right above him, and then something heavy hit Harry so hard that he was smashed into the wall. Waiting for fangs to sink through his body, he heard more mad hissing, something thrashing wildly off the pillars. He couldn't help it. He opened his eyes wide enough to squint at what was going on. The enormous serpent, bright, poisonous green, and thick as an oak trunk, had raised itself high in the air as a great blunt head was weaving drunkenly between the pillars. As Harry trembled, ready to close his eyes if it turned, he saw what had distracted the snake. Fox was soaring around its head, and the basilisk was snapping furiously at him with fangs long and thin as sabers. Fox dived. His long golden beak sank out of sight, and a sudden shower of dark blood spattered the floor. The snake's tail thrashed, narrowly missing Harry, and before Harry could shut his eyes, it turned. Harry looked straight into its face and saw that its eyes, both its great, bulbous yellow eyes, had been punctured by the phoenix. Blood was streaming to the floor, and the snake was spitting in agony. "No!" Harry heard Riddle screaming. "Leave the bird! Leave the bird! The boy's behind you! You can still smell him! Kill him!" The blinded serpent swayed, confused but still deadly. Fox was circling its head, piping his eerie song, jabbing here and there at its scaly nose as the blood poured from its ruined eyes. "Help me! Help me!" Harry muttered wildly. "Someone! Anyone!" The snake's tail whipped across the floor, and Harry ducked. Something soft hit his face. The basilisk had swept the sorting hat into Harry's arms. Harry seized it. It was all he had, his only chance. He rammed it onto his head and threw himself flat on the floor as the basilisk's tail swung over him. "Help me! Help me!" Harry thought, his eyes screwed tight under the hat. "Please help me!" There was no answering voice. Instead, the hat contracted as though an invisible hand was squeezing it very tightly. Something very hard and heavy thumped on top of Harry's head, almost knocking him out. Stars winking in front of his eyes, he grabbed the top of the hat to pull it off and felt something long and hard beneath it. A gleaming silver sword had appeared inside the hat, its handle glittering with rubies the size of eggs. "Kill the boy! Leave the bird! The boy's behind you! Sniff! Smell him!" Harry was on his feet, ready. The basilisk's head was falling, its body coiling around, hitting pillars as it twisted to face him. He could see the vast, bloody eye sockets, see the mouth stretching wide enough to swallow him whole. Lined with fangs long as his sword, thin, glittering, and venomous, it lunged blindly. Harry dodged as it hit the chamber wall. It lunged again, and its forked tongue lashed Harry's side. He raised the sword in both of his hands. The basilisk lunged again, and this time its aim was true. Harry threw his whole weight behind the sword and drove it through the hilt into the roof of the serpent's mouth. But as warm blood drenched Harry's arms, he felt a searing pain just above his elbow. One long, poisonous fang was sinking deeper and deeper into his arm, and it splintered as the basilisk kneeled over sideways and fell, twitching on the floor. Harry slid down the wall. He gripped the fang that was spreading poison through his body and wrenched it out of his arm, but he knew it was too late. White-hot pain was spreading slowly and steadily from the wound. Even as he dropped the fang and watched his own blood soaking his robes, his vision went foggy. The chamber was dissolving in a whirl of dull color. A patch of scarlet swam past, and Harry heard a soft clatter of claws behind him. "Fox," said Harry thickly. "You were fantastic, Fox." He felt the bird lay its beautiful head on the spot where the serpent's fang had pierced him. He could hear echoing footsteps, and then a dark shadow moved in front of him. "You're dead, Harry Potter," said Riddle's voice above him. "Dead. Even Dumbledore's bird knows it. Do you see what he's doing, Potter? He's crying." Harry blinked. Fox's head slid in and out of focus. Thick, pearly tears were trickling down its glossy feathers. I'm going to sit here and watch you die, Harry Potter. Take your time. I'm in no hurry." Harry felt drowsy. Everything around him seemed to be spinning. "So ends the famous Harry Potter," said Riddle's distant voice, alone in the Chamber of Secrets, forsaken by his friends, defeated at last by the Dark Lord he so unwisely challenged. "You'll be back with your dear mudblood mother soon, Harry. She brought you 12 years of borrowed time, but Lord Voldemort got you in the end, as you knew he must." "If this is dying," thought Harry, "it's not so bad." Even the pain was leaving him. But was this dying? Instead of going black, the chamber seemed to be coming back into focus. Harry gave his little head a shake, and there was Fox, still resting his head on Harry's arm. A pearly patch of tears was shining all around the wound, except that there was no wound. "Get away, bird!" said Riddle's voice suddenly. "Get away from him! I said get away!" Harry raised his head. Riddle was pointing Harry's wand at Fox. There was a bang like a gun, and Fox took flight again in a whirl of gold and scarlet. "Phoenix tears," said Riddle, quietly staring at Harry's arm. "Of course, healing powers, I forgot." He looked into Harry's face. "But it makes no difference. In fact, I prefer it this way. Just you and me, Harry Potter. You and me." He raised the wand. Then, in a rush of wings, Fox had soared back overhead, and something fell into Harry's lap. The diary. For a split second, both Harry and Ron, wand still raised, stared at it. Then, without thinking, without considering, as though he had meant to do it all along, Harry seized the basilisk fane off the floor next to him and plunged it straight into the heart of the book. There was a long, dreadful, piercing scream. Ink spurted out of the diary in torrents, streaming over Harry's hands, flooding the floor. Riddle was writhing and twisting, screaming and flailing, and then he had gone. Harry's wand fell to the floor with a clatter, and there was silence. Silence except for the steady drip, drip of ink still oozing from the diary. The basilisk venom had burned a sizzling hole right through it. Shaking all over, Harry pulled himself up. His head was spinning as though he'd just traveled miles by flue powder. Slowly, he gathered together his wand and the sorting hat, and with a huge tug retrieved the glittering sword from the roof of the basilisk's mouth. Then came a faint moan from the end of the chamber. Ginny was stirring. As Harry hurried toward her, she sat up. Her bemused eyes traveled from the huge form of the dead basilisk over Harry in his blood-soaked robes, then to the diary in his hand. She drew a great shuddering gasp, and tears began to pour down her face. "Harry, oh Harry, I tried to tell you at breakfast, but I couldn't say it in front of Percy. It was me, Harry, but I swear I didn't mean to. Riddle made me. He took me over, and how did you kill that thing? Well, where's Riddle? The last thing I remember him coming out of the diary." "It's all right," said Harry, holding up the diary and showing Ginny the fang hole. "Riddle's finished. Look, him and the basilisk. Come on, Ginny, let's get out of here." "I'm going to be expelled," Ginny wept as Harry helped her awkwardly to her feet. "I'm looking forward to coming to Hogwarts ever since Bill came, and now I'll have to leave, and what'll Mom and Dad say?" Fox was waiting for them, hovering in the chamber entrance. Harry urged Ginny forward, then stepped onto the motionless coils of the dead basilisk through the echoing gloom, and back into the tunnel. Harry heard the stone doors close behind them with a soft hiss. After a few minutes' progress up the dark tunnel, a distant sound of slowly shifting rocks reached Harry's ears. "Ron!" Harry yelled, speeding up. "Ginny's okay, I've got her!" He heard Ron give a strangled cheer, and then turned the next bend to see his eager face staring through a sizable gap he had managed to make in the rock fall. "Ginny!" Ron thrust an arm through the gap in the rock to pull her through first. "You're alive! I don't believe it! What happened? How? What? Where did that bird come from?" Fox had swooped down through the gap after Ginny. "He's Dumbledore," said Harry, squeezing through himself. "How come you've got a sword?" said Ron, gaping at the glittering weapon in Harry's hand. "I'll explain when we get out of here," said Harry with a sideways glance at Ginny, who was crying harder than ever. "But later," Harry said shortly. He didn't think it was a good idea to tell Ron yet who'd been opening the chamber. Not in front of Ginny, anyway. "Where's Lockhart?" "Back there," said Ron, still looking puzzled, but jerking his head up toward the tunnel pipe. "He's in a bad way. Come and see." Led by Fox, whose wide scarlet wings emitted a soft golden glow in the darkness, they walked all the way back to the mouth of the pipe. Gilderoy Lockhart was sitting there, humming placidly to himself. "His memory's gone," said Ron. "The memory charm backfired. Hit himself instead of us. Hasn't got a clue who he is or where he is or who we are. I told him to come and wait here. He's a danger to himself." Lockhart peered good-naturedly up to them all. "Hello," he said. "Odd sort of a place, isn't it? Do you live here?" "No," said Ron, raising his eyebrows at Harry. Harry bent down and looked up the long, dark pipe. "Have you thought how we're going to get back up this?" he said to Ron. Ron shook his head, but Fox the Phoenix had swooped past Harry and was now fluttering in front of him, his beady eyes bright in the dark. He was waving his long golden tail feathers. Harry looked uncertainly at him. "He looks like he wants you to grab a hold," said Ron, looking perplexed. "But you're much too heavy for a bird to pull up." "Fox," said Harry, "isn't an ordinary bird." He turned quickly to the others. "We've got to hold on to each other." Ginny grabbed Ron's hand. "Professor Lockhart." "He means you," said Ron sharply to Lockhart. "You hold Ginny's other hand." Harry tucked the sword and the sorting hat into his belt. Ron took hold of the back of Harry's robes, and Harry reached out and took hold of Fox's strangely hot tail feathers. An extraordinary lightness seemed to spread through his whole body, and the next second, in a rush of wings, they were flying upward through the pipe. Harry could hear Lockhart's dangling below him saying, "Amazing! Amazing! This is just like magic!" The chill air was whipping through Harry's hair, and before he'd stopped enjoying the ride, it was over. All four of them were hitting the wet floor of Moaning Myrtle's bathroom, and as Lockhart straightened his hat, the sink that hid the pipe was sliding back into place. Myrtle goggled at them. "You're alive!" she said blankly to Harry. "There's no need to sound so disappointed," he said grimly, wiping flecks of blood and slime off his glasses. "Oh, well, I've just been thinking if you'd have died, you'd be welcome to share my toilet," said Myrtle, blushing silver. "Urgh," said Ron, as they left the bathroom for the dark, deserted corridor outside. "Harry, I think Myrtle's grown fond of you. You've got competition, Ginny." But tears were still flooding silently down Ginny's face. "Where now?" said Ron, with an anxious look at Ginny. Harry pointed. Fox was leading the way, glowing gold along the corridor. They strode after him, and moments later found themselves outside Professor McGonagall's office. Harry knocked and pushed open the door. Woo! That was a long one, guys! This is one of the best clips, I think, out of this entire book. So please make sure you go and watch that, Harry defeating the Basilisk and Tom Riddle. We are on our last chapter, chapter 18. It's called Dobby's Reward. Guys, oh my gosh, this is so, so exciting. Please stay tuned for the next read. We are going to finish the book. I love you all. I miss you. And thanks for all that you do by watching these videos.